Hello everyone. So as you may or may not know, when I raid on my Sorceress, I use a pretty standard crit instant cast build, but instead of Seraphic Hail, I use Doomsday. In my spare time, I like to play around with the other variants of Reflux and Trixion, namely the Swiftness piano build and the casting build. My main problem with those builds is that for the Swiftness build, while it is fast and fun to play, because of your low cooldowns, you can leave a lot of skills hanging. For the casting build, while it is very fun to use your big casting spells like Doomsday, Explosion, and Punishing Strike, even with all-out attack, the casting animations are still a little bit too long to my taste, and your cooldowns are generally longer, so you have a bit of a waiting time in between. And so I thought, hey, why not combine them? Why not take the fast, fun action of Swiftness and combine them with the cool skills of the casting build? Now, of course, I'm not like the first one to think of this by any means. I did a little bit of research, and there are a good amount of players in Korea that play a Swiftness casting Reflux build. And so I figure I'd make a video to kind of showcase what that build might look like in our version. So I did a little bit of testing in Trixion, and this is the build that I came up with. Now, if you happen to be a Swiftness casting Reflux player out there, and there are things in this video that you don't agree with or agree with, I'd love to hear your opinions in the comments down below, so please do that for me. So I'll go over the build, I'll do a quick DPS test, and then kind of talk about what I think. So for the stat allocation, I'm using 1600 Swiftness and 500 crit. This is actually the stats from my accessories just flipped because normally I play crit. I am using 4 set Nightmare and 2 set Dominion because I am playing Swiftness and this build has the higher damage. I made a whole video comparing the 6 Nightmare versus 2 Dominion 4 Nightmare, so if you're interested, go ahead and check out that video. This puts me at a crit rate of about 19% and a CDR of about 35%. For the engravings, I'm using Grudge, Raid Captain, Reflux, Hitmaster, Adrenaline, and you'll also notice that I've included level 2 Spirit Absorption. So you might ask why? Well, if you take a look at what Spirit Absorption level 2 does, it gives you 8% attack and move speed. Now, if you didn't know, the Support Yearning Relic set actually provides these buffs for you at near a 100% uptime. So I decided to do the simulation with this in mind. The main reason being is because you'll notice in my engravings, although that this is a casting build, I do not have all-out attack. And the reason for this is two things. Number one, I'm Swiftness, right? And Swiftness being my main stat, my animations are going to be a lot shorter. And number two, I've always kind of felt, bad about using all-out attack on Reflux because while it does give you a lot of damage on your main casting abilities, it does nothing for everything else, which I always found to be a waste. The reason why people use all-out attack is so that your casting skills come out, at a reasonable rate, and so it doesn't feel terrible to play. But I figure, hey, with Swiftness, with Spirit Absorption, to mimic the Yearning set effect, maybe playing without it wouldn't be so bad, and I can slot in a damage engraving like Raid Captain or Hitmaster that would benefit all of my skills instead of just the casting ones. And given that this is a Swiftness build, even though it has casting skills, Esoteric Reaction and Rhyme Arrow and Blaze are still going to be doing good damage, so that was my reasoning for it. I did kind of test out a build with all-out attack and without all-out attack, and while the build with all-out attack does feel a little bit more fluid in casting your skills, I found that the damage without all-out attack was higher, so that's why I decided to go with this variant. So for the gems, I am using a damage gem on Blaze, then a damage and CDR gem on Rhyme Arrow, Esoteric Reaction, Punishing Strike, Explosion, and Doomsday, and for the card set, Light of Salvation 18. So that's it for the stat allocation, relic sets, engravings, gems, cards, all that good stuff. So now let's go ahead and take a look at the skill build. So you'll notice here that I am using magic amplification and enhanced strike on these abilities, namely because I don't have the crit rate to sustain final strike, and I'm using Frost Call over Seraphic Hail for a number of reasons. Number one, um, Frost Call only requires 2 tripods, while Seraphic Hail requires 3, so I'd have to take out a tripod somewhere, most likely the Ignite on Explosion or something like that. And number 2, Frost Call is a really good ability without anything attached to it, right? It helps you drain your mana to stay in Boundless MP. It helps you keep up adrenaline, it gives you a lot of identity meter, which is very useful for blinking around, and so on and so forth, but at the end of the day, it's personal preference. So that's the build. I'm gonna go ahead and do a quick 2-minute DPS test just to kind of see where the build is at, and then we'll talk about the results. So here we go. So with that, you can see that I got a DPS of about 5.1 million if I round up a little bit. Just to put it into perspective with my standard crit instant cast build that I use in raids, with this kind of setup, I average, roughly 5.2 to 5.3 mil. And of course, given that this is running Dominion, there will be a little bit of downtime in terms of using your Awakening to refresh that buff. So of course this damage is going to be lower as the fight goes on and on and on. But I found this to be kind of a refreshing balance between the fast-paced Swiftness build and the casting build with their cool abilities. And this is kind of the build that I came up with for our version, right? Kind of looking at what the Koreans do. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on this build. If anyone has any experience using this in raids, I'd love to hear about it. It seems to do pretty well in Trixion. It's very fun to play, lots of canceling, lots of things to do. And that's all I have for you today. So with that, take care and see you in the next one.